So here we are back in Mittenrahm, back in the Brakenrahm, and at the end of week 112, what would it have been? 104 would have been the end of 2 years. So we're 2 months on from that, and I can't remember what I was doing at the end of the year. I was still inside. I think I'm on track for how much time I said it would take to add stuff, and well, there's what I've been doing. I didn't check the video from last time, and I think this may have been begun, but it definitely wasn't started. I think this was mostly done. I seem to recall talking about the fact that this guy couldn't change his head position. Anyway, I haven't actually done anything about the roof. I think this is probably the state it was in, maybe in the last video, but this was probably done a few days afterwards at most. So I haven't touched this for at least nearly 2 weeks. I still quite like how this looked with the green and purple mix, but it's kind of far from where I was really intending. At this point, it's been long enough that I'm just looking at it going, well, I don't really care. So it's possible I may just come by and finish it like this. I removed most of it from this side to see if I could accomplish something using this combination of blocks, doing what I could to get around the fact there are no other purple slabs except the nether brick and the purple, which are a little bit too far in either direction on the purple spectrum. But yeah, I may have not had these guns in place, but they're just transfers from the Aethrin and colour swapped. So anyway, assuming this was at least partly in progress, it is obviously done now. Pleased with it. Actually got the suspicion I may have been adding these. Yeah, I may have commented on the fact that one of these had been bent in and the other one hadn't been. Anyway, you can... Was it finished? I don't know. I'll give it a name. I'm going to actually change it shortly. I called it the Ares and unintentionally developed a theme of Greek mythological creatures. Gorgon being the group of 3 creatures that Medusa belonged to. The Ares is the ram that, well, amongst other things, got sacrificed and turned into the golden fleece. I'll come to them in a second. This one is the odd one out at the moment. This is the Death's Gaze, which you would think might be best called Medusa, but given that I won't have a Gorgon. I don't know if this was started. I feel like it wasn't, because I don't feel like I've been working on it 2 weeks. It came out fairly good. Once it took a while to settle on how the ship was being destroyed. In the end, what I've got is the kinetic damage of the beam, the Heart of Life, has broken the ship to pieces and smashed the void generator that powers the guns. This caused the first explosion, which blew out the front, while some sort of secondary explosion, possibly TNT, has essentially cracked the middle of the ship and cracked the end stone base. It's not obvious, but it's just gently tilting down. This was removed. Not removed. This was sharper to begin with, but I decided it was a little bit too sharp. A little bit too much of a headache for determining where each drop down was going. the back half is then level and is only suffering the damage caused by the Heart of Life punching through it, so it's a lot less affected. The roof probably needed to be toned down a bit. It's up 2 blocks, which I don't know. I had another problem with it here as well. This is up, well, the floor is down here, so it's up 3 blocks, and then this is up, and it kind of distorted things a bit, quite a bit. I don't know. It's a void explosion. Very powerful and very chaotic. So we could suggest that the void explosion does not occur equally in all directions in the same way that a traditional explosion would. It goes all the way through. I decorated the parts that were being touched by stuff. Touched by the beam, rather. There is actually a way to get through this. It's a bit of a maze. And I've decided not to do anything dramatic for the back. I decided not to build a small tree, a lesser version of the one just inside. And the original, actually one of the very earliest intentions, was that the endstone base would have the material conversion. It would become very mossy. I had 2 problems with this. One is, well, it's fairly well lit inside, so it's unlikely I would have Endermen stealing it and leaving it all over the place. But the bigger problem for me was, I don't know if I think I maybe originally envisioned this being opened up more, like it was really being split in half along the length. But it was like, well, you're not going to see most of what I do with the moss at this point. And it solved the problem of it being stolen. And yeah, I also ended up hitting on this idea that the endstone's quite lifeless, and it would be unlikely that the energy beam would actually cause moss to grow on the endstone. So it was like, it's reasonable, good enough for me. So then we moved on to the Cyclops, called because it has one big gun, too big for one ship to carry. I mean, it can carry it weight-wise, but it wouldn't be able to carry the power source, which will actually be divided by the 2 ships, between the 2 ships. So there'll be some more pipes going on the other side, more tubes. I've obviously got to finish this gun. I had not planned for it to be given a gradient or pattern. I didn't like it. It was originally actually supposed to be all white, and I didn't like how I felt it was not big enough. So I started creating this pattern, and then I started filling in the pattern, which is essentially how we ended up here. And not super happy. I've had an idea now to put a gradient in for the white so that it becomes grey and then black by this point. So probably want to use the black concrete for this. So I think by here, if not a tiny bit later, just to make sure there's enough obsidian involved. Yeah, it would have all become black, which would be effectively a complete inversion of my original idea. I'm okay with it. It's just always a bit of a struggle when I'm like, I've drifted very far from my original thoughts. I'll have to see. I'm probably going to do it last. The base of the ship still need to be done, and they're missing the back sails. Apparently I quit out before bothering with the last these ones anyway. But yeah, so these ones are named. I'm actually going to rename the other ones to match what I've done here. Let's start with this one. So this is the Poli. And this is the Thema. Themus. And the significance of that being Polyphemus is probably the most famous Cyclops from, certainly from Greek mythology. Don't even know if Cyclopses appear in other people's mythologies. But yeah, I'm going to redo the nameplates so that they're matching the colours. So quite like how it worked out. It'd be nice to figure out something to do with the border. Roll with great X's, big X's, and maybe down the side. Also going to tweak the name. It'll probably be the Arum for the last one. Now there was another ship planned. Markers up there still. I had an idea for what this would be like. The original name was the Triclops, but I suppose Cerberus could be a workaround. That was the original intent, would be the exploded one, but completely intact. But then I thought, what I'll do is, it's got the one big gun down there, it's equivalent to the 6 at the front of the Gorgon. But then I'll do 2 more of these actually attached to the sides, so that can be the 3 heads of Cerberus. But other than that, it would be identical, so people would be able to see what this one was supposed to look like falling apart. But it's not that different from that. It's really just the front's been brought in more, so it's less suitable for ramming things. Other than that, it's, well, even these ones, if it wasn't for the fact they're joined together, and I've done something a little bit more extreme with the underside, yeah, there really wouldn't be anything particularly outstanding about it. It is almost exactly the same as the destroyed one. But this one, I feel like it's going to be too high to go there. Too much blocking of other things. I think it's a little bit more obvious from the viewing platform. It would need to come forward maybe and go up, which I'm not sure about doing. I did think it could probably fit in here. Like, the sails don't go over the edges. So as long as I've got the space that's the breadth of the ships. But then that seems a little close for them to be sailing, which then only really leaves me potentially down here. Could do that. But I do need space for the barges, so I'm thinking I will fill in what I want to do with the barges and the void dragons, and then decide whether I really need to fit in a 4th ship. The Grey Knights will only have 4 ships in total as well. They'll have their own big one called the Titan, and it could probably be down there. It's either going to be back by the Etherin or it will actually be forward in this space. And then we're going to be 3 ships, probably slightly bigger than these because they won't have any barges, although they will have bombers and fighters. So, yeah, still up in the air a bit, I suppose. But, well, all of that is basically what I'm going to be doing for the next several months at the pace that I'm on. I may finish this today. I started my stream an hour late, so probably not. As I say, I'm probably going to start on the barges. I need 2. I want one that's big enough to hold a big gun. Maybe not entirely practical because there won't be a power source for it, which is one of the reasons why the big ships only have one. But well, the smaller ones will only have the double or single cannons. Maybe go the other way actually. The big barges, which are probably only about twice as long as this, will have one of these on them, and then the smaller ones will have dual-linked cannons, borrowed probably straight from the E3. Yeah, they're nice and small. They'll go under a barge. These are they're smaller than the other ones as well. I'll have to think about it. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up and keep working on these sails, which are a bit of a nightmare because they're at an angle. I have carried out a threat I made to do 2x2, give or take, on the angle of the sails rather than 3-in-1. So this is 2-in-1 instead. Bit awkward doing the angle, struggling with the eyeballing, and then I adopted a much stricter approach, which I feel may actually be working. So, you know. But yeah, that's that. I'll be back again in a couple of weeks.